Penny, welcome to my TED Talk. Before I start, I'm going to ask you all to close your eyes just for a second. Take a minute to think about what you can hear in this room and around your desk, and feel free to say it out loud. It's pretty quiet today.
Super quiet.
Now think about what you can hear outside the classroom in the hallways. You can open your eyes. Although it might not be noticeable right now, expanding the scope of your awareness in this way actually increases your creativity and your artistic skill. And this connection is what I researched. My question was, how does practicing and training the senses develop both concrete artistic skills and creativity, specifically in music and visual art? To answer this question, I looked at psychology studies on art creation, art education philosophies, and research on the perception motor system in the context of art. To illustrate the points that I'm going to make, I have only included pictures of artworks by artists that use the exercises that I'm talking about in this presentation. Before I get into how creativity and artistic skill are improved, it's important to establish what these terms actually mean. Creativity, although a long debated definition in the art world, can be defined by looking at common criteria used in research done on creativity. These include things like originality, novelty, combination, and expression. Based on these, a common definition used for creativity is that it's a term that can be applied to any product of thought that may or may not combine already existing elements based on its degree of innovation, uniqueness, and originality. Concrete artistic skill has to do with someone's ability to accurately execute and ascribe a form to an artistic idea. And this is informed by someone's prior knowledge about artistic decisions and what outcomes they will have. When evaluating an artist's skill level, things like proportionality, color choices, line quality, and composition are usually considered. To provide a little more background on my topic, I'm going to tell you a bit about the philosophy of embodied cognition as well as the creative process. Embodied cognition is a philosophy that places emphasis on the connection between the body and the mind. So physical experiences shape the way we think, and through this they shape the way we act. Any interaction we have with our environment influences and determines what our cognitive processes actually look like. The stages of the creative process are not as linear as this visual makes it seem, but first one-ish is preparation. This is when you gather information, explore ideas, and identify what the problem or inspiration is that you're working with. Second one is incubation. This is when you start to form the connections. You decide how you'll handle the inspiration, and you form a mental image in your mind of the work you're going to create. Third one is illumination. This is when you actually decide on the course of action you will take to make the mental image come to life. And verification happens throughout the whole process. This is testing and refining the idea through the feedback that you get from your contact with the work to make sure it's what you want. The first conclusion that I came to is that a heightened sensory awareness, when deliberately practiced through multisensory exercises, effectively increases an individual's ability to be creative. In fact, sensory awareness is what allows creativity to be possible at all. Psychologists and art educators across various different art forms have argued this idea. One psychologist at the University of British Columbia says that the study of creativity is heavily dependent on our knowledge of cognitive psychology, and 90% of cognitive processes are triggered by sensory inputs. This means that our knowledge of our sensory faculties and how we use them allows us to study creativity accurately, or at all. This also means that an artist's sensory experience is inseparable from the work that they do. Art educators argue this as well, saying that the whole of art education is predicated on seeing, and in music, critical listening and honing awareness of how it feels to produce a certain sound are critical skills to develop. A study done by psychologists at the University of Netherlands shows this connection. Using a series of surveys, they found that individuals with high levels of SPS, or sensory processing sensitivity, and consistently practice interacting with the world with this high level of sensory sensitivity had higher than average levels of creativity. A group of art educators did a similar study on their students and found that the creativity of their students increased after all types of sensory training. And for them, that looked like giving their students different drawing warm-ups that were centered around different sensory faculties. The students' creativity was especially developed through multisensory practices. Multisensory experiences in the context of my topic are experiences where the artist deliberately focuses on multiple sensory inputs at once, gathering all of the information to create a complete experience and have a complete understanding of what's going on around them. Van Gogh is an artist that was widely believed to have synesthesia. So for him, sounds would evoke sensations of color and shape as well as sound. His creative use of color and movement in his paintings, which you can see here, is often attributed to his unique sense of multisensory experiences. So to restate my first claim, this all means that sensory awareness practices are highly effective in developing an individual's creativity, especially when there is deliberate focus put on a multisensory input. My second finding is that heightened sensory awareness also increases an individual's skill level. This connection between sensory awareness and technical artistic skill is directly related to the function of perception within the motor system. Perception is action-oriented, meaning people perceive their environment in terms of their ability to act in it. Artistic decisions are actions that the artist chooses to take in order to translate their idea into a work of art effectively. Perception's action-oriented nature allows it to influence artistic decisions very directly. And these artistic decisions are the primary thing that's considered when an artist's skill level is being evaluated. This means that an artist's skill reflects exactly how they use their senses to perceive the world. There's also evidence that participating in sensory awareness exercises directly increases skill level. One study published by the New York Academy of Sciences looked into the relationship in a musical setting. They gave pianists of all ages and of all types of prior experience exercises to do that were centered around tactile awareness, so touch, and measured their maximum rate of keystrokes before and after doing the exercises. The maximum rate of keystrokes after the exercises increased in all types of musicians, both professional and amateur, demonstrating that intentional focus on the sensory input related to an artistic tool increases key aspects of skill level, in this case, speed and precision. Despite always being effective, younger musicians did experience a more significant increase in their skill, suggesting that within a certain developmental period, skill is just more easily developed, which is corroborated by other studies I looked at as well. Like creativity, skill level is developed most effectively when using intentionally multisensory practices. One researcher who studies different practice philosophies for musicians argues that evaluating the acoustics of a recording space requires a basic understanding of the sound's physical properties and how the musician must adjust their technique accordingly. He means that when making decisions about artistic techniques, the musician must first take into account the information they are receiving from every sense and recognize the physical feeling of making certain sounds, which would be a multisensory experience. When the artist acknowledges their experience this completely and adjusts their technique accordingly, their skill level will reflect both complete awareness and effective responses to sensory experience. To restate this all, technical skill level depends on an artist's complete awareness of their environment. That's with respect to music, but skill level in the visual arts are improved by these practices as well. A study on Zentangle warm-ups demonstrated this. Researchers gave their participants different Zentangle drawing warm-ups, which are these line pattern drawings, and feelings to keep in mind while they were participating. Feelings like the pressure they were putting on the pencil as they were drawing. They found that the warm-ups helped build eye stamina, drawing persistence, and pressure sensitivity in all of the artists. This means that artists who work to gain a complete understanding of their interaction with the world and make connections between different sensory inputs, like a visual and a feeling, developed understandings that were commonly recognized in more advanced artists than they actually were. Michelangelo, the artist who painted the Sistine Chapel, used similar preparatory warm-ups to prepare for painting, and he wrote often about how to prep the hand for painting in this way. Much of the development of creativity and technical skill level can be attributed to the improvement of mental imagery abilities. If you remember from the beginning of the talk, mental imagery is one of the foundational steps in the creative process. The artwork first comes into existence as a mental image before anything else. Mental imagery is an ability that has been shown to improve through sensory awareness exercises. Using a series of questionnaires, a group of psychologists studied this connection and found that those with higher levels of sensory sensitivity were able to form more developed mental images, meaning they looked more like image 1 than image 4. Because mental images are the foundation of an artwork, the artist with higher sensory sensitivity will have an improved foundation for the rest of their process to be built upon. Skill level and creativity are then evaluated through the properties of the artwork, which are necessarily built upon these mental images. Now that I've established that practicing sensory awareness does actually improve creativity and technical artistic skill, I want to tell you a few ways you can actually use these practices. One of them is through sonic thinking, and this is a term that's usually used to describe a broader philosophy around approaching sound as a type of knowledge to be acquired, but you can practice it through actively paying attention to everyday sounds, especially the connections between movements and sounds and visuals and sounds. Another way is through doing value studies before creating an artwork. This is when you look at an image, you ignore the color and you ignore the shape to develop your sense of depth. And when recreating an image, make connections between the amount of pressure that you're putting on the material to the value that is on the page. And that also helps develop your sense of depth in an artwork. A third way is through Zentangle drawing warm-ups. These, I mentioned earlier, are a type of intuitive drawing that consists of line patterns, and they are centered around understanding how it feels to interact with different art materials. So, why is all of this important? The benefits of creative work on both an individual and cultural level are immeasurable, and developing this skill set allows individuals to contribute to cultural health and cultural vibrance. Because these exercises are so effective, artists, regardless of prior experience, can use sensory awareness practices to develop their skill and personal sense of creativity to contribute to their world. This research also suggests that sensory awareness practices can be integrated into art education curriculums to help students develop their skill set as well. As creativity levels continue to decline, it is an especially important pursuit to give younger populations the tools they need to establish their place in the world. Most importantly, everyone, regardless of their relationship with art, can use these methods to develop their own sense of self and connection with their environment, all while distinguishing themselves from current trends and refusing to let their creative muscles atrophy.